people in Torah is good, even if you don't know if you're going to say the truth. Who knows? Nobody ever knows if they're going to say an emes or pshat, right? But nonetheless, it's good to say pilpul in Torah, despite the pilpul, is a shiur, which you say a chiddush, a novel idea, so it might not come out to be emes. Nonetheless, it's good to say. Maybe it'll be right, and if it's not right, even if it's a havamina, even if it's disproven, but it's also words of Torah. So it wasn't 100% true, but it's good because the Torah process requires one to go through a lot of dross until one gets the actual gold behind that. Okay? Says more very famous words. They found in a scroll of the righteous, if you leave me for one day, I'll leave you for 2 days. Okay. This is like two people who came from Tveri and Tzipori. One came from Tveri and one came from Tzipori. And they met each other in the middle in an inn. One inn. They just started separating from each other to go back to respective places. This one went the meal in his direction towards Tveria. This one went the meal in his direction towards Tzipori. So now they're 2 meal distant from each other. So too, it's not that the Torah stays here and you can come to and back and to and from the Torah. No. If you leave the Torah goes away from you as well. It's a mystical thing. The Torah has to be approached all the time. So V'isha is like a woman also. Torah is like a woman. Shoyse Shem Mantasisha was sitting and waiting for her husband. Kozman Shoyse B'daito Li Nosei Law. As long as he had a mind to get remarried to her, Hoyse Shem Mantasisha, so she was sitting and waiting for him. Came chiefly Daita Mimena. Once he gave up on marrying her, also she goes and she married somebody else. Okay. Tani b'shem Rabbi Meir, we learned the name Rabbi Meir. Ein l'cha echad b'Yisrael, you have no person in the Jewish people. Sheino semeh mitzvahs chayom, who doesn't do 100 mitzvahs every day. How so? Koreh Shema. He reads the Shema, Mavarech V'nev Achayim, makes bracha before and after. V'ochlas pito, and he eats his bread. U'Mavarech V'nev Achayim, and he makes a bracha before and after it. U'Mispal Shlosh Pam Mishal Shmonesrei, that was 3 times 8 Shmonesrei. V'chos v'os Shar mitzvahs V'Mavarech Lev. He does other mitzvahs, makes a bracha on them as well. V'chener Meir Omer Tzoter Meir said, Ein l'chodem Yisrael she'en ha-mitzvahs makifas l'sol. There's no person among the Jews who mitzvahs do not surround. Tefillin barosha, tefillin in his head, and tefillin bezroin, tefillin in his arm. Mezuzah bepischon, he has a mezuzah on his door. Mila besor, he has a bris milah on his flesh. Arba tzitzios betalisa makifos, he has 4 tzitzis on his towels which surround him. 7 times a day I thanked you on your righteous, on your just, on your righteous your righteous judgments, your righteous halachos. So 7 days to thank God for surrounding us in mitzvahs. And so too it says, the angel of God, which are the mitzvahs, which a person does, camp around him and they save him from any bad things. Nichnas, when a person goes into the merchatz to a bathhouse, Roas has more room and sees himself naked. Omar, a person says, and in the Bavli it says about David HaMelech. The David HaMelech said this: Oily, woe to me, shani oramin mitzvahs. Well, that I'm naked of mitzvahs. Came and she bid Milah. It sounds like here it's also going on David. Once he looked at his Milah, he's Baruch Hu. David started praising God, as it says, Lamnatseach al Shminis Mismar David, a praise on the 8th. The 8th meaning the Milah which is done on the 8th day, a Mismar David. Okay, we'll leave the last line for the siyum of Yerushalmi at 9 o'clock. Let's start Masech the Peah. Now here I have a few extra Peahs for those who don't have Gemara, so I think I have enough. That's it? Okay. Masech the Peah is the first Masechta in Yerushalmi which has no Bavli on it. For the rest of Zroim, as a matter of fact, there is no Bavli. the Bali goes straight from Brachas to Shabbos. And the Yerushalmi, however, has Peah and Demai and Kilayim and Shvius, and then it's going to have Trumas, Maisas, and Shvius, right? All the Mishnayos and Seder Zorim have Yerushalmi on them. Now, the Peah is a relatively simple Masechta. Relatively, I say. No Masechta is simple. Even the ones which they say are simple turn out to be hard. But the thing is that perhaps we're not familiar with the mitzvah of Peah because we don't study Bavli on it. Peah is a mitzvah to leave the corner of your field to poor people. Okay? And the question is how much you have to leave, and the question is what other matnos aniyim there are gifts to poor people from the field. All these things we'll see in Masechta Peah. But in the meantime, the Masechta starts out with a very famous Mishnah. You're all familiar with this Mishnah. If you aren't, you're in deep trouble. I don't know if you're Orthodox Jews. Elu dvarim shein lehem shiur. These are the things which have no limits. Right. Very good. Ha-Peah. There's no limit. You give as much as you want. The question is whether you can give as little as you want, but you give as much as you want. Ha-Bikurim. First fruits. Ve'areon. The amount of times you come to see God in the Beis HaMikdash. The Gemilas Chasodim, favors, kindness unto others. The time not tzedakah. Tzedakah does have limits. You can't give all your money to tzedakah, but you can do as much chesed as you want. The Talmud Torah and learning Torah. These are ones which have no limit. There are other ones which have no limit, which also, now you have no limit, but if you do them, you get reward not just in the world to come, but you even get fringe benefits in this world. These are things which the following things, a person gets the fringe benefits, literally the fruit, in this world. But the principle, the main reward comes, is excellent l'olam haba. What are they? Kibud avayim, honoring one's father and mother, kabilas chasadim, loving kindness, bringing peace between one and one's fellow man. The Talmud Torah Kinei Kulam, what is the best mitzvah of all? The mitzvah which is in balance, which balances out all the others because it's so significant. Study of Torah. Rabbi,
why isn't Shiluach HaKen mentioned here together with Kibbud Avraham? They both have the same.
I'm not sure if that's true. Doesn't the Gemara say that the case in the end of the Chulin is the guy went up to the roof and dropped dead immediately after having done Shiluach HaKen? So I don't know if you get rewarded in this world for Shiluach HaKen at all. I don't know. Yeah, but that's Olam Haba. I don't know if that's true. Maybe the Gemara will deal with it. I don't know. I've never learned Peah Yerushalmi before. So I can't tell you, but maybe the Gemara will deal with it. Okay? The Bavli doesn't deal with the question you ask. Mm-hmm. Yes.
The inline shiur of the Rayon.
Yeah.
The way you explained it was you can go other times.
Anytime you want.
Or could it be that while you're going during Shalosh Regalim, you can bring endless number of korbanos?
That's correct. That's the second pshat in Bnei Moshe. He says both pshatim. My pshat is the first one he says, your pshat is the second one he says. So you're in good shape.
This says something missing, like at the end of isn't there something at the end that's like Ishto or something?
Is hey Ishto in the Tefillah Siddur? I don't know. I thought it says Beram Chaver in the Siddur too. There's Siddurim outside. I don't see any in here. But I think it says Ishto Ben Adam Chaver also in the Siddur. Could be in different Siddurim, the different Nuschos. In any event, it says more. Rabbi Yomi Bar Levi said, Omar, Rabbi Yitzchak, Rabbi Ami, Havi Yasur, Yitzchak, Rabbi Ami was sitting, Makshi, and they asked, Loma Lotinina Truma Imor. Why don't we mention Truma? Truma has no shiur. Why is not mentioned one of the things that has no shiur? The rice has no shiur for Truma. There's no specific measurement for it. So the two people sitting were Yitzchak, Rabbi Ami. So Rabbi Ami gave the answer first. He gave the first answer, I should say. Rabbi Ami Mipnei. By the way, there's this annoying little yuds in the middle of the lines here. These yuds go to the Gilead Hashas. It's quite annoying. I don't know why they picked that letter to symbolize it, but every large yud like that goes to Gilead Hashas. Rabbi Ami Mipnei Machlokes. Why did they mention? Why did they not mention Truma? Because in fact, it's going to be a Machlokes. It's going to be later on in Zroim. I'm not sure I recall exactly where. It says somewhere here. They were going to see a Machlokes. Maybe there is indeed a shiur by Truma. So that's his interpretation. Rabbi Yossi. Now the Mashbiach points out it's clearly a typo because the other party who was in this conversation was not Rabbi Yossi. It was Rabbi Yitzchak. So originally it said in Yerushalmi Reish Yud, and some Chochem made a Rabbi Yossi, but it's really Rabbi Yitzchak. So Rabbi Yitzchak said, Adam Osa Kosa De Bikurim. The answer is that a person can make his entire field into Bikurim, but a person cannot Bein Adam Osa Kosa De to Truma. A person may not make his entire field into Truma. Everybody agrees that you may not make your whole field Truma. There has to be something left over because the very nature of Truma. Truma by definition is a tithe. You can't have a tithe which includes the entire field. It's not possible. So therefore, Truma has a shiur, Peah does not. That's why Truma is not mentioned in our Mishnah over here. Says Mari Stephen, they asked the Kasha, Peah. Wait a second, is that true? Well, what about Peah? You mentioned Peah, Peah. Person cannot make his entire field into Peah. So we're going to see if that's in fact the case. Says the Shemitah, it's not yours to make Peah. Shemitah, your field is hefker. It doesn't belong to you. Yeah, not relevant because it's hefker. You're not making Peah. Again, it's mentioned here. Rabbi Yossi says, so really, Shamir gets really lumdish. It's amazing love. It's like Achron, the Yerushalmi. It's like Reb Chaim. But let me tell you, before we see it inside, what the Yerushalmi is about to say. Something which, again, I didn't know before today. Brachos, most of the concepts we had in Brachos are familiar to us because we learned Bavli, or, we know more or less about Brachos. But this is stuff which is virgin ground. So here, it says here, Peah, you can't give the first stalk in your field is Peah. Because the halacha is, think of this lomdishly, the halacha is, you can only give Peah on a harvest. Oh, what constitutes a harvest? The cutting of a stalk. So you must cut one stalk before you become chayev in Peah. So therefore you can make your entire field Peah except for the first stalk. Okay? You got that? Now, it says the Gemara's kasha was, Gemara's kasha is going to be, you can't make your whole field Peah, you got to leave at least one stalk. The first stalk. So it's just like Truma. Truma, you can't give your entire field as Truma. Here too also you can't give your entire field as Peah because you have to leave one stalk. So the Yerushalmi is going to give a amazing love to Shans. Whereas listen to this Yerushalmi. I'll say that outside, they don't flow inside very quickly. It says, by Peah, when is the Shas Chiyuv? When they become Chayiv to give Peah? Only after you harvested the first stalk, which is not Peah. Then when you become Chayiv, you can give everything left to Peah. So Taka, there's no shiur by Peah, because then after you became Chayiv, which is called Shas Miruach, the time literally when it's smoothed out, that's a Truma term, but we borrow it for Peah as well. Once you become Chayiv, you can give everything. By Truma, you become Chayiv from the moment you start, from Shas Miruach, literally from the time you smooth out the pile of the grain in your silo. At that point, you cannot give all of your field, all of your grain for Truma. You must leave something at the end. So by Peah, that which you have to leave, you leave before the Shas Chiyuv. Once you become Chayiv, you can give everything else to Peah. By truma, no. After you become chayiv, you still must leave over. You're not allowed to give after you become chayiv your entire field to truma. It's a very lom de shechilot, very, very, very abstract.
In other words,
No. If you give it all to Peah, you don't have to give any truma meiser or anything. That's it. Peah absolves from trumas and meisers. Once the poor people get it, it's absolved from trumas and meisers. Okay, so says the Gemara. Let's see that. But again, the Gemara asks, once again, you're not allowed to make your whole field pay either. Says the Gemara to Nisa, and it's mentioned in our Mishnah. I'm ready to against me, Rabbi Yitzchak. I'm ready to no. Harvesting the first stalk. This is like the smoothing of the pile by truma. Before you cut the first stalk, your field is not chayv and peah yet. Only once you cut the first stalk, then it's chayv sadeu b'peah. Therefore, once you cut the first stalk and it became chayav, you want to make all your field peah from now on? Also, you're allowed to do so. But by truma, before the pile is smoothed over in the silo, you're not chayiv in truma. Once it becomes smoothed over, then it becomes chayiv in truma. Now, truma. If you want to make your entire silo into truma, you're not allowed to do so. So truma has a shiur once it becomes chayiv. It's a tithe. You have to leave some remnant over at the end. Peah, once you became chayav, once that first stalk is harvested, you can give all the rest of your field to Peah. Okay? It's great shot. Doesn't sound like an achra? What? The first one you cut. The first one you harvest. The cut's here. No, it's not a designated stalk, right? Anyone you designate, okay? Says where Tamon Omer, it doesn't. You can leave just the bare minimum, but you must leave something. You can't give everything to truma, okay? Because then it wouldn't be a tight. The Tinina Tamon, because as we learned over there, Omer called Gorni Truma. Somebody says, I want to give all my silos Truma. So the person said, I want to give all my dough is Chala. Lo Mar Klumachi Shai Miktas. It's meaningless unless he leaves something over. Now, once he talked about the first stalk, let's talk about a little bit more. Shibos Arishona, the first stalk. Mau. Yeah. Tough. Tough. I spell that right? Tough. We'd rather give it to poor people. Don't worry. Not everybody's going to give all their field as Peah. Don't worry about the Kohanim and Levim. They'll do okay. The Bikurim, no, that's different. Okay, says more. Shibos Rishon Ma'u Shetei Chayavis Peah. So now the Gemara says, the Gemara asks, can the first stalk, the first harvested stalk, can that be chayiv and peah? So the Gemara immediately says, well, what? What are you talking about? You just got through telling us that the first stalk cannot be chayiv and peah. You have to cut the first stalk to be chayiv and peah. Says the Gemara, Ef Shalom Arkain. Can you possibly say that? He chayeves. If that's chayiv, kosa deu peah. Sorry. He chayaves if the first dog is chayav, kosa deu peah. He oh, wait a minute, I forgot how to read this. Just a second.
That's not what your Russia says.
Oh, okay. Avshalom Akain, he chayves. It should be, I forgot. It should be, he mechayeves kosadei v'peah. The first stalk is the one which generates, which causes the rest of the field to be chayev and peah. So he chayeves the peah. You want it to be chayev and peah? even though you see the word chayeves twice here, the person is really mechayeves. It's the one which generates the chiyuv on the rest of the field. You want it to be chayev, even Rabbi Noble. Here for Peah? So we just started Peah. So on the we learned before you came in that the first stalk in a field has to be harvested before you get the chiyuv to give Peah. Because first you have to start a katsir before you can give Peah on the katsir. So therefore the Yerushalmi says that the first stalk can never be chayiv and Peah. It in and of itself is what generates the chiyuv. It can't be chayiv. Okay, that's what we just learned. Now up to the first wide line. So now the Yerushalmi asks, okay, fine, if that's the case, Katzir Shibolos Rishayna. You've harvested the first stalk. V'nisrfa. Now the first stalk got burnt up. You have to harvest another stalk before you become chayiv and Peah. Right? You harvested one, but now it's gone. You don't like the avamina, right? Neither is Yerushalmi, don't worry. Nishmina minado. Let's learn it from this case. Katzar chetzio mochar. You harvested half a stalk, and he sold that half. Kotzar. That which you harvested is a harvest, and therefore you don't have to harvest another one. That already generated the chiyuv. Well, that's basically what the Yerushalmi is saying. Even though you're right, I would have said it much more directly. But the Yerushalmi is saying, just like you can sell that half a stalk and it's still considered to be harvested, so too, even against burnt, is considered to be harvested as well. So to katzar chetzio v'hikdish. So too, if you cut off the half, you harvested half a stalk and you were makdish it, mashakatzar. That which you were kotzer is considered vikdish mach kotzer. You consecrate that which you kotzer noisemina shiur ala kol. You could still give for that which is left over on the entire field. Now, meaning that you can now give Peah on the rest of it. The hekdesh lav kasarufu is in hekdesh considered to be like burnt. In other words, it's removed from the entire cheshbon. So nonetheless, you can still get Peah afterwards. That teaches us Hadar. This infers to us that Katzar Shibos Rishonim and Nisra. If you cut the first stalk and then it got burnt up, Ain't Tzorich Liksar Pam Shniya. You don't have to harvest the second time. Now, says the Gemara. So that we paskin. You paskin that once you harvested the first stalk, whether it's whether it's extant or not extant, from there on in you can give Peah for the rest of the field. The chiyuv is regenerated, right? Kilo esadeu. Now, kilo sadeu. Now, this is an interesting thing. We know this is a halacha which we'll see later in the Sechta. Let's say you were evil, or not evil is a bad, perhaps strong term. You didn't know that halacha. You were over, right? You didn't give Peah. You harvested your whole field. So the halacha is now you have to give Peah from your sheaves. You have to leave a certain amount of sheaves out in the field for the poor people. Okay? So the halacha is kila sadeu. You finished harvesting your field at Omar Choser Peah Omori. We know that the halacha is you have said, it's been stated elsewhere, that now you have to give Peah from the sheaves. Now, but the sheaves, you know which is what in one of the sheaves? You know what's in one of the sheaves now? The first stalk. The first stalk is parted from Peah, because that was the one which generated the chiyuv. Can you give Peah from the sheaf which holds that first stalk? Or do you have to know where that first stalk is and not give Peah from that sheaf because that first one is potter?
Now, the question is, was that only a trigger?
Yes.
That created a shiur, or is there an issue?
It's exempt altogether now. It's an issue to give that now as Peah. That's right. Theoretically, you could say Bata Barov, but the shayla is, let's even know which one it is, right? And we could take it out. Do we have to take it out? Or do we have to say Bata Barov? Okay? So it says, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi says, Nail of Peah Samorim, let's learn the Peah given from the sheaves. May Peah's Kama from the Peah when it's still standing. Ma Peah's Kama lo Chosa Peah Liksira Shibos Rishona. Just like when you give Peah on the standing grain, you can't give Peah from the first stalk of Peah's Omorim. Yankov. Ha Peah Samorim, so to the Peah from the sheaves, lo tachs or Peah liktira shibolas rishoina. You can't give Peah from the first stalk. That's it. It's exempt. It's exempt forever. Period. Ha Peah yesh l'shir milamata vein l'shir milamalu. Now, Peah, we said it was one of the things in Lev Shir. It says the first opinion here in the Yerushalmi is that it has a minimum shir. It doesn't have a maximum shir. There's shir milamata and it has a minimum, literally down below. And the shir milamata has no shir on high, it has no maximum. Habikurim v'arayon, first fruits and coming to the Beis HaMikdash, or the korbanos you bring to the Beis HaMikdash, ain't shir lolamav lolamata. They have no shir, neither minimum nor maximum. That's one opinion. Istanatani, however, there's another price which holds ha Peah v'abikurim v'arayon, even Peah and lo shiur has no set amount, lo lamalom v'lo lamaton, not maximum nor minimum. Ma nafik mi ben neon. What is the difference between the two opinions, whether Peah has the minimum shiur or not? V'hein, the following case. Now, before I go on,
obviously it isn't. It's obvious. I mean, what would be the difference?
Well, it is. You're right. It is obvious. But the problem is that the Gerus Yerushalmi is messed up. So before I go, let me give you the mashbiach. For those of you who I haven't told you before, this is Rabbi Sivitz from Pittsburgh. The best sefer I have found on the Yerushalmi. Oh, what do I know yet? But this is a good sefer, and I photocopied all of his pages on Peah. And you can take it home with you or leave it here as the case moves you. I have one here in my briefcase. So Rabbi Sivitz says that he'll give us the gears of the Gra here. But in the meantime, let me tell you, the shiur, if it would be a shiur d'oraisa, is 1/60th of your field. The minimum shiur would be a 60th, which we know, according to Peah, right? Which we know would be the shiur d'Rabbanan, even if there is no shiur d'oraisa. Now, the thing is like this: that which you give as Peah is exempt from Trumas and Maasros. You asked me about that before. Peah is exempt from Trumas and Maasros. Once you give Peah, the Aniyim don't have to give Truma Meiser. For that matter, nobody has to give Truma Meiser. So now, says the Yerushalmi, the Nafkamina is like this. Now, let's look in the Mashbiach, because the Mashbiach here is more accurate. So on the bottom right, HaPeah yesh l'shir milamata, ve'en l'shir milamala v'chulei, Istana tani Peah v'chulei, ein l'm shir lo l'mal v'lo l'maton. Ma nafik mi b'nei. What's the nafkamina? What's the difference? Ve'hein chan min shishim. The shiur is 1/60th, right? 1/60. Ma damar Peah yesh l'shir milamaton. He holds Peah's got a shiur, minimum shiur. Ve'en l'shir mal just doesn't have a maximum. Mashin nosan. Let's say he gave less than a 60th. So whatever he gave. Not chazar of a hosif. If you keep on adding pater b'maiser, whatever you add is exempt ad shosh yashlim until you make up a 60th, right? Because since the shiur is a 60th, whatever you give up to you make up a 60th. Even if you give it in several stages, is all pater mina maiser. But Mandamar Peah ain't la shiur, lo l'mala v'lo l'mata. The people which holds that Peah has no shiur, neither minimum nor maximum. So Mashinosak Farnifta, let's say you gave 1/1000th of your field, right? But that already was the din of Peah. You were in the kindness of the Peah.
So now afterwards you decide you're going to be magnanimous and give up to a 60th. What you give the second stage, that's chayv and meiser. Because it's la'achar mitzvah. The mitzvah you're already mekayim. So therefore what you give now is chayv and trumas and meisers. It's a very big nafkamina. You see that? According to the shita that the shiur is a 60th. So whatever you give, no matter how many times you give up to the 60th, is chayv and peah. It's chayv and is part from my meiser. According to the shita which holds that you yaitze with a minimal amount, even 1,000th, it has no shiur, minimum shiur. So whatever you gave the first time you gave, that's what's exempt from meiser. Whatever you give afterwards, in order to make up a shiur, since that's already after you mekayim the mitzvah, that's no longer exempt from meiser. That you have to give meiser on. Okay.
But whatever you give the first time, according to since there's no maximum, so whatever you give the first time would become potter.
Right, that's true. That's according to everybody. Right, that's true. What Rabbi Noble is pointing out is true according to everybody. Said that no matter whatever you give in the first time you leave Peah in the field, that's all exempt from meisers, even if it's much more than a 60th, because that all becomes part and parcel of the mitzvah. Whatever you give the first time, the question is what you give the second time on the same field, is that considered to be part for meisers? So if you hold there's a shiur, so anything you're giving up to you reach the 60th is all exempt. Above the 60th is chayav. And according to shiur that there is no minimum shiur, so whatever you give the second time is chayav and meisers. Right. It is interesting, but it makes sense. I like that concept. I think that it's the kiyum mitzvah of peah, which patters you, not your intent. And therefore, if you come after you're mekayim the mitzvah, that's la'achar meiser. You can no longer pat yourself with trumas and meisers.
Let's say you want to give a promise to a niyam. Later on, so are you potter with?
That's right. If you want to give a gift to an ani stam azoi, you're chayv in meisers. There's no blanket exemption. It's not a tax deduction. So therefore, here makes sense to say the svara that after you're mekayim the mitzvah, you can't go back afterwards. It's not. Surely you don't find it unreasonable. Okay, intriguing is a good word. Yes. Right. Okay. So, yes. Yeah. Yes. No, we have to do it every year. It doesn't roll over. Every year it's given. Second time in the same year. In other words, he gave it in stages. No, it's always on that harvest. In that harvest, he comes to that harvest, whenever he's harvesting, it's in June, right? So that harvest, let's say in June 1st he leaves Peah over. That's fine. But let's say the first day he gives Peah 1/100th. Then the next day he decides, you know what, I only gave 100th the first day. Let me give another 40th. Right, the next day to make it up to a 60th. So that's on June 2nd. That's what I mean by the second time. Not next year, that year on June 2nd. So then that's going to be the nafkamina, whether that's chayv and meiser, potter and meiser, what he gives on June 2nd. Yeah, the whole field, he can't leave anything else. It has to be a standing corner of his field. The only time you can leave from your sheaves is if you messed up and you didn't give any peah when was standing. Okay? Says the Gemara, Rabbi Brechia, let's go back to the Gemara now. Rabbi Brechia boy, 5 lines to the bottom. Rabbi Brechia boy, that once we mention things which have no shiur, why don't we mention the amount of ashes which we put into the water for a sota to drink? There's no shiur for that. Why don't we mention the amount of ashes of a parah aduma which we have to sprinkle on an individual? The amount of saliva a Yavama has to spit out of Yavam. There is no shiur for that. The amount of blood of a mitzorah, birds, that we have to put on him. Why do we mention all these things? Says, well, I'll tell you why. Lasira Mastis, our mission only brought stuff, Eladvarim, only stuff, Shumosivale, and the way you add on, Yesh Basiyos mitzvah, you're getting a greater mitzvah. In other words, when you add to Peah, to Bikurim, to Rayon, to Gmilas Chasonim, to Kibbut Aveim, to Talmud Torah, when you add on more, you get a bigger mitzvah. Those are things in Rena Mishnah. If you put in more ashes of a parah aduma than you have to in the water, there ain't any greater mitzvah. There's no idiot to be machmir in this. You're not going to get any bigger mitzvah. If you put more afer in the saltest waters to drink, there's no greater mitzvah than that. And so on and so forth. If the Yavama wants to, she might hate the Yavam, she wants to spit at him even more. But to salivate more and spit more at her Yavam, at her brother-in-law, there's no bigger mitzvah that way. Right? So therefore,
This is also what you said, when a best observes
Chalitza.
they make sure that there is a
Has to be ro kanir le'inayim. Right. You have to see the saliva, but that's all. It's not a bigger glob is not a bigger mitzvah. Okay? The elu afa pishu b'yispalei, in all these cases, even though you add on them, ein b'asiyas mitzvah, there's no mitzvah in adding on. Okay, we'll stop here for tonight and we'll do the siyum now. Maybe we'll go downstairs. We'll set up downstairs for the siyum. That's it. All right. Yeah. Okay, we're going to finish the Masechta. Before we finish, I just want to say a short word. This is customary. Yerushalmi here in the last plot in Berachos, Samach brings down a very well-known statement, which is not a pasuk, though people quote it as if it is a pasuk, where it says, "Im tazveni yom yomayim azveka." If you leave me for one day, I'll leave you for 2 days. Yerushalmi brings it down. The nusach is Kasim Amrem Shim ben Lakish Gilas Chasidim Motzu Kasuv. They found in the scroll of the righteous that whatever that is. Yom Tazveni Yomayim Azvek. If you leave me for one day, I'll leave you for 2 days. And Yerushalmi goes on to give a marshal and says that it means that if you leave the Torah and you depart from it, it's not just that the Torah remains stationary and you move from the Torah, but rather the Torah moves away from you in proportion to the way you move away from the Torah. It's obviously a mystical thing. The way you treat the Torah is the way the Torah treats you as well. So the Yishbitzer brings down, says on this, we have a pasuk in Mishlei. Pasuk in Mishlei says, "Hato'ife necha bo ve'inenu." If you just learn Torah superficially, then the Torah flies away from you. It's like you just cast your eye upon it, then the Torah will fly away from you. So the Ishbitzer brings down this Yerushalmi and says that in light of the pasuk in Mishlei, he understands that Yerushalmi means that if you just learn Torah superficially, if you're not soivel, if you don't suffer, when you learn the Torah, then it's very easy for Torah to fly away from you. You don't have an intense relationship with the Torah. The Torah doesn't have an intense relationship with you. And therefore, just as you are not intense with it, it's not intense with you. And you can go in one direction, and it will go in another direction, and you will not have that bond together. However, says the Yishbitzer, that therefore we can learn from this that if you do have a very intense relationship with the Torah, if you learn Torah through suffering, and it's difficult, and it's hard to do, and nonetheless you make sure to learn Torah, as it's brought down the Medrash, Torasi shalamadati ba'af, the Torah which I learned despite all odds. Af chochmas yom dalid, it says in Mishlei, the Torah which I learned with difficulty, with travail, with savlonus. They are not meaning patience, the way the Ishbitzer use it, but with being sovel, with suffering. That Torah will never fly away from you, and that Torah you will never have to undergo this terrible thing of tazveni yom yomayim azveka. So to learn Yerushalmi, of course, is difficult. It's hard. And not just that, people look at you askance from time to time and say, what is this business? Are you learning Yerushalmi? Are you a Ger Chassid? Or what other... As if you need a justification to learn Torah. It's an amazing thing. Yerushalmi...
Are you already a fucking Bavli?
What? Are you fucking Bavli? Right? All these kinds of pejorative questions which people give you when you tell them you're learning Yerushalmi. Not only that, you're teaching about Yom Yerushalmi, but this is Torah. Talmud Yerushalmi is Talmud, is Teresh Baal Peh, and of course this be learned, and it's worthwhile being soivel. People looking askance and people mocking you at the rabbi. This is what forges our tighter connection with Torah. And Yirtzeh Hashem should be mezakeh
those of us who are learning together, that we should have that bracha of the Ishbitzer, who says here that this Torah which we learn, despite difficulties, is the Torah which we are able to keep and maintain. The Yerushalmi Berachos ends off with a well-known ending, which ends very many Masechtas, which interesting, ironically enough, also ends off the Masechta which we're currently learning in Daf Yomi Bavli, the Krisos. Rabbi Lezer b'Shem Rabbi Chanina, Talmidei Chachamim marmin shalom ba'olam. Talmidei Chachamim generate more peace in the world. Matam in the Yerushalmi, matam means from which pasuk do we learn that out from? So now you've all learned something special about the Yerushalmi by coming to the siyum. Matam means what is the pasuk from which we learn this? V'chol b'nayich limudei Hashem. All your children will be learned of God. For Rav Shalom b'nayich, and your children. Of course, in the Bible it says Al tikri b'nayich al b'nayich. Your children will generate a lot of peace. Hajjalach Meseches Berachos mitamid Yerushalmi v'Hajjalach Daitlan Meseches Berachos mitamid Yerushalmi Datachlon. Leisach Berachos Meseches Berachos mitamid Yerushalmi Lo Tisnash Minan Lo Ba'amodim Lo Madasi. Hajjalach Meseches Berachos mitamid Yerushalmi v'Hajjalach Daitlan Meseches Berachos mitamid Yerushalmi Datachlon. Leisach Menach Meseches Berachos mitamid Yerushalmi Lo Tisnash Minan Lo Ba'amodim Lo Madasi. Hajjalach Meseches Berachos mitamid Yerushalmi v'Hajjalach Daitlan Meseches Berachos mitamid Yerushalmi Datachlon. Sash Menach Meseches Berachos mitamid Yerushalmi Lo Tisnash Minan Lo Ba'amodim Lo Madasi. Yotov Menachan Eloheinu ve'Evoseinu Shatei Toroschem Menosenu B'Lam Bezel Teimanu B'Olam Haba Chanin Bar Papa Ryan Bar Papa Nachum Bar Papa Achoy Bar Papa Avamori Bar Papa Rafa Bar Papa Rachish Bar Papa Socha Bar Papa Ada Bar Papa Doru Bar Papa Harav Noin Oheis Divrei Soscha V'Finu V'Fibiosam Chol Beis Yisrael V'Niyah Kulan Anachum V'Tzelatzeinu V'Tzelatzeim Chol Beis Yisrael Kulan Yodei Shbechim V'Mdei Sorosecha Moivet Chachmedim V'Tzelatzecha Zolam Kiliyolam Hili Hili bi Tomi Chukach Laman Lo Evosh Lo Moshkach Gudech Givom Chisori Chuchatzane Lamdeni Chukach Amen 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 Selav Oed Modim Anachum V'Nechon Elohinu V'Evoseinu Sh'Samtuch Elokeinu Yoshve Beis HaMedosh V'Lo Samtuch Elokeinu Yoshve Konos Shona Mashkim V'Hem Mashkim Ona Mashkim D'Vitzor V'Hem Mashkim D'Volim Telim Ona Amen V'Hem Amen Ona Amen V'Kal V'Sochar V'Hem Amen V'Eino V'Kal V'Sochar Ona Otzim V'Hem Otzim Ona Otzim V'Chayilum Haba V'Hem Otzim V'Shachas Shenema V'Atolihim Terdei V'Shachas An Shidami Yimrimo L'Yechtzu Yimei V'Niftach Boch Yirtzov V'Necha Eloheinu Kishem Shal Zoltanu L'Sayim B'Sechus Berachos Mitamid Yerushalmi Kein Ta'azrinu L'Aschim B'Sechus L'Sfarim Achim L'Saimam Lilmod L'Lamei Lishmar V'Lasu L'Kaim as Kol Divei Samut Torah B'Yavah Schus Kol Tanoim V'Amoraim V'Tamidei Chachomim Yamod Lanu L'Zarenu Shlotomo Shatzar Mipinu V'Pi Zarenu V'Zer Zarenu Ad Olod Diskaim Bonu B'Salecha Tancha Uscha V'Shalchucha Tishmar Lecha V'Achitzosa Hi Sisichecha Kivir V'Yamecha V'Sivu L'Chosh Nos Chaim Arachimi B'Yaminu M'Smol Shel Chavod Adonai Od Zamoyten Nevrech Samov Shalom. So any chiyuv? No. Anyone? So should take still for Kaddish. Yeah. Second one.